Maybe, yeah. I mean, for me, I don't need an explanation. I thought it was a good title. I thought it was a great couple of words together when I was singing background vocals, you know, in the studio. That's always the first time I read the words, is when I'm about to sing the background vocals, and I'm familiar with the melodies, but the words he usually writes at the last minute, and so I put the piece of paper in front of me, and I'm about to start fitting my harmony with the words that I'm seeing on the paper, and then I'm hearing him singing, and figuring out how I'm going to phrase things and stuff like that. And I saw that, you know, that word Stadium Arcadium, and it just looked beautiful to me, you know. And for me, I'm a person, I don't really need more than that, you know. I don't need to know what I'm the Walrus means, you know. I think it's a beautiful song, and it's a beautiful collection of words, and for me, like, it's very unimportant what it means, because I think usually, even when we think we know what things mean, I don't really think we do. I mean, words in people's heads, even if it's the same words, they mean one thing to one person, they mean another thing to the other person. They're not very precise, so if you get a feeling from something, to me that's the important thing. The transference is being made, you know, if you get a feeling from it. And for me, I got that feeling from it, so I didn't even question it when it came up as an idea for the title of the album. There's no question that was the perfect title, you know. Recently I came across a word called arcanum that means secret.
Yes.
And I started to wonder if maybe the spirits were trying to tell him Stadium Arcanum, and he interpreted it as Stadium Arcadium, because Arcadium's not a word and Arcanum is, but, you know, either way, I think it means the same thing. It's just all part of my growth. I guess in the band it often feels like there's this momentum, this energy, this force that carries the band, that's been carrying the band since 1983, and when we get together to write songs, we're just getting inside that force, and that force has its own momentum, and it's actually a very effortless kind of thing, because all I have to do is be intending to make a Red Hot Chili Peppers album, and music comes out of me that I identify with the spirit of the band, you know. On my solo albums, there's really no one momentum that carries it. The momentum that might carry one album is different than the momentum that carries another album, and it's really like you know, in a way my albums take more effort, and in a way they take less. Like, I probably have to hustle more to get my own albums, like, happening, or to get them out there, but at the same time, I can make my own records in like 4 days, and Chili Peppers, you know, this record took a year, so in a way, maybe my records have a just as big of a force carrying them along. It just works differently, you know. For me, there is that difference of really feeling like when you do something in a band, you can't really take credit for it, even on songs where I wrote the basis of the sections, they turn into something completely, you know, that I never would have expected when everybody else in the band adds something to them, to where I definitely don't feel any more responsible for any of the songs than anybody else in the band, you know. And obviously on my solo songs, it's me that's writing them, you know. Whereas like in this band, we really do write as a team, you know. And so I'm not any one of us can think of it as ourselves being responsible, you know. Anthony feels like his melodies are inside of the music already, you know, and whenever Flea and I write bass parts or guitar parts to each other's music, we feel like we're just playing what's inside. Like, if I write a guitar part, I feel like it's inside of his bass line before I write it, you know. So yeah, so there's you know, there's a big energy carrying this band, and it's one of the fun things about it is, okay, this energy's here, what can I do within this to do something different that hasn't been done by the band before, you know. It's like so what ends up being the same thing as the Chili Peppers' first demo ends up being more of a feeling than it is any kind of a musical structure. You know, the musical structure is completely changed, you know, but the feeling is still the same, you know. I think it's always been that. I've always been as important as I am now in the band. I think people might not have recognized it, maybe because Flea and Anthony are more famous or something like that. But ever since Blood Sugar, I've written, you know, as much as I've written on this album, I wrote on those albums. You know, there's really I think now that I'm playing more guitar solos and longer guitar solos, people are paying attention to me more. But I'm not really doing anything that I wasn't doing before. I was always equally important. I think it was more maybe an image that might have come from the media that Flea and Anthony had more to do with it than me, because it was never like that. We were always ever since Blood Sugar, we were a really equal. We were a band of equals, you know, and democratic band and the music was always coming from me or from Flea by about 50% from each of us, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, as far as the guitar playing, I just change all the time. To me, I like the guitar playing on this album better than anything that I've done before, but it's not so much that it's any kind of a linear progression, you know, because if you look at it the way people look at it, you'd probably think that By the Way would be the lowest, and California above that, Californication above that, and Blood Sugar above that, and then this album, Stadium Arcadium. But that's not the chronological order that they went in, you know. To me, I just have to keep shifting around, you know. I just have to keep changing and keep approaching the guitar from a new angle to keep myself interested in it, you know. That's why on the last album I liked playing straight, you know, I liked the rhythm very straight, and on this album I like the rhythm very off time and awkward, you know. On the last album I liked everything perfect. On this album I like everything to be messed up. And on the last album I was thinking about melody. On this album I was thinking about rhythm. You know, I have to be very diametrically different than I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago for me to still keep being interested in playing. That's why even now, when we were making the album, I was thinking in terms of rhythm all the time. Now I'm thinking in terms of harmony, and I'm listening to classical music all the time. When we were listening to the album, I only wanted to hear music for the rhythm of it. I didn't care about the chords of it or anything, you know. So it's more about me just having to change. And I think it just so happens that in this incarnation of who I am, in this part of my evolution process, I'm playing in a way that's drawing more attention to myself, but that's not why I'm playing that way, you know. It's true, I really at this point in my life, I really love flashy guitar players, you know, from whether it's like Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads or Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck. I love that kind of guitar playing right now. 4 years ago, you couldn't pay me to listen to that kind of guitar playing. I just didn't care about it at all. I was liking really simple guitar players who played really simple. I just changed, you know, and so to me, when I was playing simple, people thought, oh, you know, he's. I mean, I don't know what people think, you know, but I could imagine people thinking less of my guitar playing because that was my angle. But it wasn't that I was any less of a guitar player then. It was just that I just was thinking in a way of being subtle and being, you know, not putting myself out in the forefront, not playing solos and stuff. Now I like playing solos, you know. Well, I know that in the effort to want to always change, you know, Anthony and I weren't as interested in playing funk music at that time. I mean, we had certain things, you know, what funk songs there was, like, you know, Can't Stop, like, that was something that came from me. So I wouldn't say that I was, like, against funk, but I didn't want to do any blues-based music on By the Way. That was my thing. Now blues is very important to me, you know. On By the Way, I just didn't want it to be blues-based. So if Flea came in with something that was blues-based funky, I wasn't going to be into it at that time. That was just where I was at. I couldn't help it, you know. I couldn't help it. I just wasn't into it. I wanted, if I was going to, I didn't mind if something was funky, but I wanted it to be, to still have that European sense of melody. And so, you know, obviously, like, that was just where I was at the time. And I guess Flea did get frustrated a few times because he'd bring something in and I wouldn't get excited about it because it didn't fit into how I was thinking of the record. On this record, I'm really into blues. I'm really into funk. You know, I'm loving the early Funkadelic records, especially, which are really blues based. And so this opened that up for me to be more open to that side of what Flea was doing, you know, and for me to bring in stuff like that myself, you know. Like I said, my taste just changes. I can't help it, you know. It's like, it's not like I decide to like one kind of music and not to like another kind, but that's how I am. I get very opinionated about things, like in the same way that I was saying about how I didn't like flashy guitar players then, but I do now. At that time, I didn't want to listen to any music that had blues feelings in it, and now, like that, there's nothing that makes me feel better. I love like Muddy Waters and Lightning Hopkins and you know, Howlin' Wolf, and like nothing makes me feel better than to listen to that kind of music, you know. For me, like that and classical music right now are just like the end of all music for me, you know. You know, at the same time, like Flea was also into that European sense of melody. By the way, like there's a lot of songs. Like it's not like Flea just writes funk and I just write melody or something. That's a false public perception. You know, universally speaking, Flea wrote that song. You know, it's like a lot of the songs on By the Way that you think of as being like John type songs, they're not written by me, you know. It's like and like I said, something like Can't Stop that you might like associate more with Flea, it's me, you know. So these perceptions of the public, they're just people's perceptions. They have nothing to do with the real story, you know. Flea was really into music like the Smiths and Susie and the Banshees when we were making By the Way. It's not like that was just me, you know. There was some stuff that I just thought was out of character, you know, for the rest of what we do. But at the time, I didn't think that I was limiting him. Maybe I just, you know, I was just being honest about how I felt, you know. On this, we're always honest with each other, but luckily on this album, like, our two separate conceptions of how the record should be matched up and were one thing, you know. Same thing as Blood Sugar Time, you know, or where we both wanted the same thing, and that's how it ended up being with this album. And by the way, maybe to some degree we both wanted different things, you know. On this album, we both just happened to want the same things. It's not like we decided to. We both happened to really think highly of the same kind of shit, you know, like you know, Wu-Tang Clan was my favorite music while we were making this record, and Flea loves Wu-Tang Clan, so, you know, we both, you know, or he'd be listening to Ice Cube and I'd be listening to Eminem or something, but they're similar enough to where we're both going into the studio with basically the same kind of frame of mind, you know, and you know, and obviously that Jimi Hendrix thing is something Flea really has in his soul, so when I come to rehearsal and I just start soloing on the wah-wah pedal and doing feedback for a half hour, he's right in there with me, you know, and we're just having fun, you know.
So you can assure that Red Hot Chili Peppers are still a honest band?
So honest band? Yeah, we're a very honest band. We're very sincere and we really care about what we do, and you know, being able to make music together means everything to us, and we feel so blessed to be able to do it, you know, with each other. For me, like, there's no more important musical relationship of anybody in my life than to what I have with Flea, you know, and I'm so glad that what we have right now is something to where we're both really, you know, caring for each other, and we're both really looking out for each other, and we're both really standing by each other. Because there's you know, there's nothing I could imagine being better than what I have with him and what I have with Anthony and what I have with Chad. It's something that when I think about the forces that brought us together, it's still hard for me to even understand how that could happen, that fate could bring us together, because it feels so perfect, you know.